You all do know that in World War II, the decision was made by the Republicans and the Democrats and Roosevelt as president, all together, no dissension, no major dissension, that relying on a market in the war was not a good idea. It would be dangerous. Simple reason. So many resources had to be diverted for the war effort to build planes and trains and the uniforms for the soldiers and all that, that there wouldn't be very many resources left to produce consumer goods. You know, meat, sugar, gasoline, basics. And so if there was too little of that, then there would be a difficult struggle among the American people to buy the scarce basics. And that would drive up, that's how markets work, right? If there's a shortage of supply and it's less than the demand, then remember the little exercise you had to do? Demand, the price goes up. Okay, well, let's see these smarties in the War Department in Washington. If the price goes up, then the scarce milk, sugar, meat, gasoline, really important things, would all go to the richest people. Now, you need unity in a war. You need all those poor people, the grunts that are in the army, not to get letters from home about how we got no food, but the rich family up there. We don't have milk for the children, but they got very fat cats up at the top of the hill in that big house. This would destroy the unity for a war. So in order to avoid the disunity that would threaten the war effort, no more market. And what did the government do? It issued ration cards. For those of you who don't know your history, a little lesson, and you'll love it. And for those of you who know a little bit about Marxist phrases, you'll love it even more. The government produced a ration card. If you went into a store to buy a quart of milk, money wouldn't do it. You had to have a ration card entitling you to 1 quart or 2 quarts or 3 quarts. And a store owner who gave you milk without a ration card would be liable to arrest. That was committing a crime. Well then, how did the government assess needs and wants? It decided to use need. And it did a study of what people need. And it distributed ration cards according to its understanding of people's needs. If you had more children, you got more ration cards for milk. If you had fewer children, you didn't. It had nothing to do with your income. It had to do with the government's assessment of your need. Here's a way to phrase it. The ration cards were distributed to each according to their needs. U.S. government, because there was an urgent need to fight a war. Suppose you thought there was an urgent need to give equality to people who have been suppressed and repressed for the history of your whole country. Is that a worthwhile purpose? Maybe you should issue ration cards to fund that. Or to do something about the homelessness, which in this city is an epidemic, as it is in other parts of the country, too. Maybe finally this eradicating poverty, which we do forever, could mainly be handled by saying, wait a minute, let's divert the resources needed, and the rest of us will have ration cards so we can share what there is according to our needs while we solve an urgent problem, you know, like a war. Doesn't take that much imagination. But nobody then questioned that the government was a perfectly reasonable agency to ascertain what people's wants and needs are and to figure out, in a democratic way, how to meet them.
The year is 1945. World War II has ended. Nazi Germany has been defeated by the Allied forces, the United States, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. In Britain, it was Prime Minister Winston Churchill who led his country to victory. He was celebrated as a hero in May 1945. But only 2 months later, the Brits elected a new parliament and a new Prime Minister, Clement Attlee. Why did they elect Attlee and his Labour Party? Well, because Attlee had a simple and appealing message. Britain had won the war, but now it needed to win the peace too. Clement Attlee promised to build a New Jerusalem, a country where milk and honey flow. And how did he want to make that happen? Well, with the same tools that Britain had used to win the war. A massive collective national effort. The idea was that the British state, which had defeated evil Nazi Germany, would now use its extraordinary power to build a better country. The Attlee government took control of the British economy. Entire industries were nationalized: coal, iron and steel, aviation and railways, telecommunications and shipbuilding, gas and electricity supplies, even the long-established Bank of England. They were all brought into state ownership. Britain's new economic order expanded the welfare state. The Attlee government created the National Health Service. Countless regulations and controls accompanied it. Britain never got as close to central planning as it did in the years following World War II. The result was dismal. It ended in economic disaster. In 1973, the UK had to introduce the 3-day week to save electricity. Then, in 1976, it needed a bailout from the International Monetary Fund. The economic crisis culminated in the winter of discontent of 1978 and 9, when nothing worked. The British experiment of a state-run economy had failed. So Britain demonstrated how not to pursue economic policy. For sure, sweeping state powers are necessary to win wars, but running an economy is different from fighting a war.